Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. Once upon a time, in a land far away in the east, there lived two brothers named Ali Baba and Kasim. Though they were brothers, their lives could not have been more different. Kasim was a wealthy merchant who owned a large shop in the town's marketplace. He had married a rich woman, lived in a grand house with servants, and wore fine silk robes embroidered with gold thread. But despite all his wealth, Kasim was greedy and selfish. He never helped anyone, not even his own brother. Ali Baba, on the other hand, was a poor woodcutter who lived in a small, humble house with his kind wife, Fatima. Every day, he would take his old donkey into the forest to cut wood, which he would then carry back to town and sell for whatever small coins he could get. Though Ali Baba and Fatima had very little, they were content and treated everyone with kindness. One hot afternoon, Ali Baba was deep in the forest, cutting wood as usual. His donkey grazed nearby, and the only sounds were the chirping of birds and the rhythmic chopping of his axe against tree trunks. Suddenly, Ali Baba heard something that made him freeze, the thunder of many horses' hooves echoing through the forest. He looked up and saw, through the trees, a large group of horsemen riding toward him at great speed. They were dressed in dark clothes, with weapons hanging from their belts and fierce expressions on their faces. "Thieves!" Ali Baba whispered to himself in terror. "They must be thieves. If they find me here, they'll surely kill me." Thinking quickly, Ali Baba grabbed his donkey and hid it behind thick bushes. Then he scrambled up a tall tree and concealed himself among its leafy branches, just as the horsemen rode into the clearing below. From his hiding place, Ali Baba counted them carefully. 1, 2, 3. He whispered to himself. 38, 39, 40. Exactly 40 thieves. The men dismounted from their horses, each one carrying heavy bags that clinked with the sound of gold and silver. They were clearly returning from a successful robbery. The thieves gathered around a large, flat rock face at the base of a cliff. One man, clearly their leader, judging by his rich clothes and the way the others deferred to him, stepped forward and faced the rock. He raised his arms dramatically and shouted in a loud, commanding voice, "Open Sesame!" Ali Baba nearly fell out of the tree in shock at what happened next. The seemingly solid rock face began to tremble and shake. Then, with a grinding sound like thunder, the rock slid aside like a huge door, revealing the entrance to a hidden cave. The leader entered first, followed by all 40 thieves, each carrying their heavy bags of stolen treasure. Once the last thief had disappeared inside, the rock door closed by itself with a deep rumbling sound. Ali Baba clung to his tree branch, his heart pounding. What kind of sorcery is this? He wondered. After what seemed like an eternity but was probably only half an hour, the rock opened again from the inside. The 40 thieves emerged, now empty-handed, having deposited their loot inside the cave. They mounted their horses and prepared to leave. The leader was the last to exit. He turned to face the cave entrance and called out, "Close Sesame!" Immediately, the rock door slid shut with a boom, leaving no trace that it had ever opened. The entrance was completely invisible once more, just a normal-looking cliff face. The 40 thieves rode away in a cloud of dust, their horses' hooves fading into the distance. Ali Baba waited in the tree for a long time, making absolutely sure the thieves were gone and wouldn't return. Finally, when the forest was silent again except for the birds, he climbed down carefully. His legs were shaking as he approached the mysterious rock. He looked around nervously to make sure he was truly alone. Then, taking a deep breath, he spoke the magic words he had memorized, "Open Sesame." With the same grinding, rumbling sound, the rock door slid open. Ali Baba stared into the dark cave entrance, hesitating. What if the thieves came back while he was inside? What if there were traps? But curiosity and the hope of improving his family's desperate situation drove him forward. He stepped inside, and as his eyes adjusted to the dimness, he gasped in absolute amazement. The cave was enormous, as large as a palace. And everywhere he looked, there were treasures beyond imagination. Mountains of gold coins sparkled in piles taller than a man. Silver cups and plates were stacked in gleaming towers. Bolts of the finest silk in every color imaginable were rolled and stored along the walls. Chests overflowed with diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and sapphires that caught the light from the cave opening and threw rainbow sparkles across the walls. There were strings of pearls as thick as rope, crowns encrusted with gems, golden swords with jeweled handles, and treasures from kingdoms near and far. "This must be everything the 40 thieves have stolen over many, many years," Ali Baba whispered in awe. For a moment, he was tempted to fill his pockets and his donkey's saddlebags with as much treasure as they could carry. But Ali Baba was an honest man, and he knew that greed often led to disaster. So he took only what seemed reasonable, 3 moderate-sized bags of gold coins. Surely the thieves wouldn't miss such a small amount from their vast hoard. He carefully carried the bags outside, loaded them onto his donkey, and then turned back to the cave. "Close Sesame," he commanded. The rock door rumbled shut, and Ali Baba hurried home as fast as his old donkey could carry him. When he arrived at his small house, his wife Fatima rushed out to greet him. "Ali Baba! You're so late. I was worried something had happened to you. And why didn't you bring any wood?" "How will we?" She stopped mid-sentence when she saw him carrying the heavy bags. "What are those?" Ali Baba quickly ushered her inside and closed the door. Then he opened the bags and showed her the gold coins inside. Fatima's eyes went wide. "Gold! So much gold! Ali Baba, what have you done? Did you steal this? We'll be thrown in prison." "No, no, my dear wife," Ali Baba assured her. "I didn't steal it. Well, technically the gold was already stolen by others. Let me explain everything." He told her the whole story, the 40 thieves, the magic cave, the words, "Open Sesame," and "Close Sesame," and how he had taken only a small portion of the vast treasure. Fatima listened with her mouth hanging open. When he finished, she said, "This is incredible. But Ali Baba, we must be very careful. If those thieves discover that someone else knows about their cave, they'll hunt us down." "You're absolutely right," Ali Baba agreed. "We must tell no one, not a single soul. Now, let's count this gold and hide it safely." "Yes," Fatima said excitedly. "But we have so many coins. We should measure them to know exactly how much we have. I'll borrow a measuring cup from your brother Kasim's house." "No," Ali Baba said quickly. "Remember, we can't let anyone know about this." "I'll just say I need to measure some grain," Fatima replied. "Don't worry. I won't say anything about gold." Before Ali Baba could stop her, Fatima had already hurried out the door toward Kasim's grand house on the other side of town. When she arrived, Kasim's wife, a proud, nosy woman who looked down on her poor relatives, answered the door. "Oh, it's you," she said with barely concealed disdain. "What do you want?" "I need to borrow a measuring cup for a few hours," Fatima said politely. Kasim's wife raised her eyebrows suspiciously. "A measuring cup? Whatever for? You're so poor you barely have any food to measure." I need to measure some lentils I bought," Fatima lied, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Kasim's wife said, not believing her for a moment. Her curiosity was burning. What could poor Ali Baba and his wife possibly need to measure? She fetched the measuring cup, but before handing it over, she secretly smeared a bit of sticky honey on the bottom of it. "Here you are," she said with a false smile. "Just bring it back when you're done." Fatima thanked her and hurried home, unaware of the trick. Back at their house, Ali Baba had spread a cloth on the floor. He and Fatima spent the next hour measuring and counting the gold coins. There was more than they had ever dreamed of, enough to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. When they finished, Ali Baba dug a hole in the corner of their small house and buried the gold carefully. Then Fatima cleaned the measuring cup, or so she thought, and returned it to Kasim's house. The moment Fatima left, Kasim's wife turned the cup upside down to check the bottom. A single gold coin, stuck in the honey, fell into her palm. "Gold!" she gasped. They were measuring gold coins. But Ali Baba is the poorest man in town. Where could he possibly have gotten so much gold that he needs to measure it? She immediately ran to find her husband at his shop in the marketplace. "Kasim! Kasim!" she cried. "You won't believe this. Your brother Ali Baba has so much gold that he has to measure it instead of counting it. Look!" She showed him the gold coin. This was stuck to the bottom of the measuring cup we lent them. Kasim's eyes widened with greed and jealousy. "What? That's impossible. Ali Baba is just a poor woodcutter. Where would he get gold?" "I don't know," his wife said, "but he certainly has it. While you work hard as a merchant just to earn a comfortable living, your poor brother has so much gold he measures it by the cupful." Kasim's face turned red with anger and envy. He immediately closed his shop and marched straight to Ali Baba's humble house, pounding on the door. Ali Baba opened it, surprised to see his brother. "Kasim! What brings you here?" Kasim pushed past him into the house and held up the gold coin. "Don't play innocent with me, brother. Where did you get the gold you were measuring yesterday? I know you have a great amount of it, enough to measure rather than count. How dare you keep such a secret from your own brother?" Ali Baba's heart sank. He had been discovered already. He looked at his wife, who shook her head sadly. The honey trick had revealed their secret. Kasim continued angrily, "If you don't tell me exactly where you got this gold, I'll go straight to the authorities and report that you've stolen treasure. You'll be arrested and thrown into prison." Ali Baba knew his brother was greedy enough to actually do it. With a heavy heart, he realized he had no choice. "All right, Kasim," he said quietly. "I'll tell you everything. But you must promise never to reveal the secret to anyone else." Yes, fine," Kasim said impatiently. "Just tell me." So Ali Baba told his brother the whole story, about the 40 thieves, the magic cave, and the words that opened and closed it. Kasim's eyes glittered with avarice as he listened. His mind was already calculating how much treasure he could take for himself. "The cave is hidden behind a large rock in the forest, you say?" Kasim asked. "And the words are, open sesame and, close sesame?" "Yes, but Kasim, please be careful. Those thieves are dangerous, and, tomorrow morning, you must take me to this cave and show me exactly where it is," Kasim interrupted. "If you refuse, I'll tell everyone your secret." Ali Baba sighed. "Very well. Meet me at the edge of the forest at dawn." That night, Kasim could barely sleep for excitement. He lay awake making plans. While his foolish brother had taken only 3 small bags of gold, Kasim intended to take as much treasure as he possibly could. He would take 10 donkeys, no, 20, and load them all with gold and jewels. He would become the richest man in the entire kingdom. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, Ali Baba led Kasim to the location of the magic cave. "There," Ali Baba said, pointing to the rock face. "The cave is behind that rock. Now please, Kasim, take only what you need and leave quickly. The thieves could return at any time." Yes, don't worry," Kasim said dismissively, waving his hand. "You go home now. I don't need your help." Ali Baba left reluctantly, a bad feeling settling in his stomach. As soon as his brother was out of sight, Kasim approached the rock, his heart pounding with greed and excitement. He spoke the magic words loudly, "Open sesame." The rock rumbled and slid aside, revealing the cave entrance. Kasim laughed with glee and rushed inside. The sight before him was even more magnificent than Ali Baba had described. Mountains of gold, rivers of silver, jewels that sparkled like stars. Kasim ran from pile to pile, laughing and shouting with joy. "I'm rich! Rich beyond measure! I'll be wealthier than the Sultan himself." He had brought several large bags with him, and he began frantically filling them with gold coins, handfuls of loose gems, jeweled daggers, golden cups, anything valuable he could grab. His greed was so overwhelming that he kept taking more and more, far more than he could possibly carry. Finally, when his bags were so full they could barely be closed, Kasim dragged them toward the cave entrance. He was panting from the effort, but his face was alight with greedy triumph. He reached the rock door and opened his mouth to speak the magic words, and realized with cold horror that he had forgotten them. Close, close. What was the word? Not close barley. Not close wheat. What had Ali Baba said? Close door, he tried desperately. Nothing happened. Close gate. The rock didn't move. Close stone. Still nothing. Panic seized Kasim's heart. Open door. Open barley. Open wheat. Open corn. He tried every word he could think of, but in his greed and excitement, the word Sesame had completely vanished from his mind. The magic words wouldn't work unless they were exactly right. For hours, Kasim paced back and forth in the cave, trying desperately to remember or guess the correct word. But as the day wore on, his panic grew. What if the thieves returned? What if he was trapped here forever? As the afternoon sun began to set, Kasim heard the sound he had been dreading, the thunder of horses' hooves approaching the cave from outside. The 40 thieves had returned. Their leader spoke the magic words, "Open Sesame." And the rock door slid open. There stood Kasim, frozen in terror, surrounded by bags of treasure he had clearly been trying to steal. The thieves' leader drew his sword, his face dark with fury. So, someone has discovered our secret cave. And not only that, you dare to steal from us? Please. Kasim begged, falling to his knees. I meant no harm. I'll put everything back. Just let me go, and I swear I'll never tell anyone about this place. But the thieves showed no mercy to those who invaded their hideout. The leader's face was cold as stone. You have seen our faces. You know our secret. That cannot be allowed. What happened next was swift and terrible. Kasim paid the ultimate price for his greed. After dealing with the intruder, the thieves examined the cave carefully. Someone else must know about this place, the leader said grimly. Otherwise, how would this man have found it? We must be vigilant. Double the guards and watch for anyone suspicious. That night, when Kasim still hadn't returned home, his wife grew worried. She ran to Ali Baba's house, tears streaming down her face. Ali Baba. Kasim went to the forest this morning and hasn't come back. I'm so worried. Did something happen to him? Ali Baba's face went pale. He had a terrible feeling he knew exactly what had happened. I'll go look for him, he said quietly. He took his donkey and went to the cave, though he already feared the worst. When he arrived, he saw Kasim's 10 donkeys still waiting outside the cave, confirming his fears. He spoke the magic words to open the cave, and inside he found his brother, dead, killed by the thieves. Ali Baba wept for his brother, despite Kasim's greed and selfishness. He was still family. Carefully, Ali Baba brought Kasim's body out of the cave and loaded it onto one of the donkeys. Then he closed the cave and led all the animals back to town. He brought the body to Kasim's wife, who collapsed in grief. Together, Ali Baba and Fatima helped her through the difficult days that followed. They arranged a funeral, telling everyone that Kasim had died in an accident while traveling. After a proper mourning period, Ali Baba and Fatima moved into Kasim's larger house to take care of his widow. Ali Baba took over Kasim's merchant business, using some of the gold from the cave to help it grow and prosper. He was careful not to spend too lavishly or attract too much attention, but gradually, his business became quite successful. Ali Baba and his family lived well, but they were always careful and generous, helping the poor and never forgetting their own humble beginnings. Meanwhile, the leader of the 40 Thieves had been watching and waiting. Over time, he noticed that the treasure in the cave was slowly decreasing. Someone was taking small amounts regularly. "Someone else knows our secret," he told his men. "Find out who it is. Go into town, watch the marketplace, and look for anyone who has suddenly become wealthy. Someone who is spending gold freely, that will be our thief." One of the thieves disguised himself as a common merchant and went to the town's marketplace. He watched carefully, and after several days, he noticed Ali Baba, a man he remembered as a poor woodcutter, now dressed in fine clothes, buying goods and paying with gold coins. The thief followed Ali Baba home and saw the large house where he now lived. To mark it so he could find it again, the thief took a piece of chalk and made a large X on the front door. That evening, however, Ali Baba's clever slave girl, Morgiana, came home from the market. She was sharp-eyed and intelligent, and she immediately noticed the strange chalk mark on the door. "This is suspicious," she thought. "Why would someone mark our door? It can't be for any good reason." Being very wise, Morgiana took the chalk and marked X's on several other doors up and down the street, making them all look identical. The next morning, the 40 Thieves rode into town, led by the thief who had marked the door. But when they arrived at the street, they found 5 houses all marked with identical X's. "Which house is it?" the leader demanded angrily. I don't know," the thief stammered. "I marked only one house, I swear. Someone must have discovered my mark and made copies to confuse us." Furious at this failure, the leader of the thieves decided to take matters into his own hands. He disguised himself as an oil merchant, putting on simple clothes and a fake beard. Then he had his men climb into large clay oil jars, 1 thief per jar. He loaded 39 jars with thieves onto a cart, and filled just 1 jar with actual oil to make his disguise believable. In the early evening, the disguised leader drove his cart through town until he reached Ali Baba's house. He knocked on the door. Ali Baba answered, and the oil merchant bowed respectfully. "Peace be upon you, friend. I am a humble oil merchant from a distant city. I've been traveling for many days, and night has fallen. All the inns in town are full. Would you, in your kindness, allow me to spend the night in your courtyard? I have valuable oil to protect, you see." Ali Baba, who had always been kind-hearted, didn't suspect anything. "Of course. You're welcome to stay. Bring your cart into the courtyard, and I'll have my servants prepare dinner for you." The disguised thief brought his cart into Ali Baba's courtyard and lined up the oil jars. Ali Baba invited him inside for a meal. As they sat eating, Morgiana was in the kitchen preparing the dinner. She suddenly realized they had run out of oil for the lamps. "Oh no," she muttered. "We need more oil, and the shops are all closed now. Wait, that oil merchant in the courtyard has jars full of oil. Surely he won't mind if I take a small amount for the lamps." She took an oil lamp and went to the courtyard. She approached the first jar and lifted the lid to dip her lamp inside. "Is it time yet?" whispered a voice from inside the jar. Morgiana was so shocked she nearly dropped her lamp, but she was quick-witted enough to stay calm. She realized instantly what was happening. These weren't oil jars, but jars full of thieves. And that merchant inside was their leader. Thinking quickly, she whispered back in a gruff voice, "Not yet. Wait for the signal." She went to each jar in turn, and each time a voice whispered the same question. Each time she gave the same answer. Finally, she reached the last jar, the only one that actually contained oil. Morgiana's mind raced. There were 39 thieves hiding in those jars, waiting to attack her master. She had to act fast. She took the jar of real oil and carried it to the kitchen. There, she poured the oil into a large pot and heated it over the fire until it was boiling hot. Then, using a large ladle, she carefully carried the scalding oil back to the courtyard. Going to each jar in turn, Morgiana poured generous amounts of boiling oil into them through the small opening at the top. The thieves inside couldn't escape and couldn't make noise without alerting their leader. One by one, they were silently defeated by the clever servant girl. When she had finished with all 39 jars, Morgiana went back inside the house and continued serving dinner as if nothing had happened. At midnight, when the house was quiet and everyone appeared to be asleep, the leader of the thieves crept outside to wake his men. He went to the first jar and whispered, "Now! Come out now!" Silence. He went to the next jar. "Wake up! It's time!" Still no response. Growing alarmed, the leader opened one of the jars. The smell of boiled oil hit him, and he saw what had happened. Horror and rage filled his heart as he checked jar after jar, finding all his men dead. Realizing he had been discovered and was now alone, the leader of the thieves fled into the night, leaving his cart and jars behind. The next morning, Morgiana told Ali Baba everything that had happened. Ali Baba was amazed and terrified. "Morgiana, you saved all our lives. Those thieves would have murdered us in our sleep." "We're not safe yet, Master," Morgiana warned. "The leader escaped. He knows where we live, and he'll surely come back for revenge." She was right to be cautious. The leader of the thieves, now alone and consumed with hatred, vowed to kill Ali Baba himself. Several days later, a distinguished-looking merchant appeared at Ali Baba's door. He was dressed in fine silks and wore an elegant turban, the leader of the thieves in yet another disguise. "Good sir," the stranger said with a respectful bow, "I am a merchant newly arrived in your town. I've heard that you are a fair and honest businessman. I was hoping we might discuss a partnership." Ali Baba, not recognizing the disguised thief, welcomed him warmly. "Please, come in. Any friend of business is a friend of mine." They sat in the reception room, drinking tea and discussing trade. The disguised leader was charm itself, laughing at Ali Baba's jokes and complimenting his taste. But hidden in his robes was a sharp dagger, and he was waiting for the right moment to strike. Morgiana served them tea and fruit. Her sharp eyes studied the merchant carefully. Something about him seemed familiar. The way he moved, the way his eyes darted around the room. Then she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Under the edge of the man's fine robe, she glimpsed the hilt of a dagger. She immediately understood, this was the leader of the thieves. He had come to murder her master. Morgiana knew she had to act, but how? If she simply accused him, he might attack immediately, and someone would certainly die. She needed a plan. "Master," she said sweetly, "to honor your distinguished guest, would you like me to perform a dance? I learned a traditional dance from my homeland." "What a wonderful idea," Ali Baba said. "Please do, Morgiana." Morgiana left and returned wearing a dancer's costume with a veil and bells on her wrists and ankles. In her hand, she carried what appeared to be a decorative dagger, a common prop in traditional dances. She began to dance, moving gracefully around the room. Ali Baba clapped along with the rhythm. The disguised thief leader watched with narrowed eyes, his hands slowly moving toward his hidden weapon. Morgiana danced closer and closer to the guest, spinning and swaying. The bells on her ankles chimed with each step. She raised her decorative dagger high as part of the dance, spinning faster and faster. Then, in one swift movement, she lunged forward and plunged her dagger into the guest's heart. Morgiana! Ali Baba screamed in horror, jumping to his feet. What have you done? You've murdered my guest. Look, master. Morgiana said, pulling open the dead man's robe to reveal his hidden dagger and, underneath his fine clothes, the rough garments of a thief. This is no merchant. This is the leader of the 40 Thieves. He came here to kill you. Ali Baba stared in shock, then recognition dawned on his face. You're right. I see it now, this is the same man I saw in the forest that day. Morgiana, you've saved my life again. He embraced his brave servant girl with tears of gratitude. You've saved me and my family twice now. You're no longer my slave, from this day forward, you're a free woman. And I give you half my fortune as a reward. But Morgiana shook her head. I need no reward, master. Your kindness to me over the years is payment enough. But I would ask one thing, let me marry your nephew, Rashid, if he'll have me. We've loved each other for a long time. Ali Baba was delighted. Of course. The wedding shall be held next month. And so it was. Morgiana married Ali Baba's nephew in a grand celebration that lasted 3 days. The entire town came to celebrate the brave woman who had defeated the 40 Thieves. With the leader dead and all his men gone, Ali Baba and his family could finally live in peace. The magic cave, now forgotten by all but Ali Baba, remained hidden in the forest. Ali Baba visited it occasionally, always taking only what he needed and using much of it to help the poor and build schools and hospitals in the town. Ali Baba lived to be a very old man, respected and loved by all who knew him. He shared the secret of the cave only with his eldest son, who promised to use it wisely and help others, just as his father had done. And they all lived happily ever after, proving that kindness, wisdom, and cleverness are far greater treasures than all the gold in the world.